Hey folks, it's Nate, and today I'm doing a little bit of a Sherlock Holmes-y investigation. It's not going to be that complicated. Basically, these Dana 60s that I've got sitting in my garage, I need to figure out what they came out of. The seller told me that they came out of a 78, 79 Ford F-150, 250, or 250, 350 Snofighter edition, which means they're supposed to be a very desirable kingpin front axle. However, the internet tells me that it may not be, and the reason for that I'll show you once I have the axle pulled out from the corner that I have it stored in. The internet makes me believe that I do not, in fact, have Snofighter axles. I'm not sure if I care about that all that much, but I do want to know for sure, because knowing means I know what parts I need to buy, and knowing means I know that if I decide to sell them instead, or decide to sell that second housing, I know what I'm selling, because that's important. I don't want to lie to whoever is buying my Dana 60s. So, every Dana housing, as far as I know, at least the Dana 60s, has a BOM number stamped into the tubes or on the pumpkin or whatever, right? I need to find that number on these front housings to find out what they were originally in. If I can find them, then I should have proof positive what they came out of and what I'm dealing with. So, I can't find them on the front housings, either of them. One of them has brackets all over it, and I think that's probably why. The other one doesn't, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the Sandblaster, which you should see behind me, sort of over there, and strip off all the years of rust and undercoating and see if I can find these numbers. So, let's go. Okay, I didn't really love how the plastic ended up, so I turned off the camera and resituated everything. But there we go. That thing is heavy, even with those shafts in it. Whew. Alright, so let me give you a quick tour of the axle we're dealing with. So here it is. Now this is of course the passenger side tube. This is the driver's side tube. On the Snofighter, driver's side tube is supposed to be longer and allowing more surface to mount things like a spring perch. Not a spring perch, a coil bucket. Now if you're going coilovers, this is fine. In fact, this looks like maybe it was set up for coilovers to begin with. It doesn't have quite as many tabs on it as I was expect out of a coilover setup, because there's not enough link arms. So this may have been for a link, and that was for a link. Maybe this thing was never actually finished. I really don't know. Judging from the truss, the fact that there's no link mount on the truss makes me feel like this was never actually installed after it was modified. Or this truss is there for strength and that's it. I don't know. But that doesn't matter at this point. According to most of the information I have found online, the BOM should be somewhere here or on the back of this tube. So I'm going to take the Sandblaster and clean every bit of grime and grunge off of this tube on the front, see what I've got. Some housings have it printed here. There is a decent number right here, which I have tried to look up, and it does not seem to be the bomb. These others are basically model number whatnots. Like, some people say they see D60, you know, stamped here. This number will look like it had promise, but you can't see it on the video, I'm sure. But I plugged it in, and it doesn't come up with a bomb. So, yeah, I'm going to clean that off better first, maybe, and see if maybe that clears it up. Maybe I had gotten some numbers wrong, and maybe that solves the mystery. If it doesn't, I'm going to start on this tube and go from there. Now, Sandblaster isn't a complicated thing. It's basically a bucket of sand. This little grate on here keeps you from getting debris in there. It's got this cool little handheld jobby, which gets air connected to it. And when you pull the trigger, compressed air comes through here, and it sucks sand in from there, and it blows it out here at a very high velocity. That, of course, strips off whatever it is you're pointing it at. So, let's get that going. So, when you're sandblasting, I highly recommend that you wear protective gear. I'm not talking like motorcyclist 90 miles per hour down the highway protective gear. I mean like a decent hood, some gloves, and a long sleeve shirt. You don't need anything crazy. So I'm gonna go ahead and get geared up. So check this out, folks. I don't know how well you can hear me, since I'm on my phone now instead of my normal GoPro. There's a number right there. Can't quite make it out. I put the marker around it so that I can see where to continue sandblasting. It's barely readable. Can make out like a D maybe, or a 0. 10313 2. All right, I'm gonna keep working at this and hope that I can actually get a readable number out of this thing. So that's about as clean as I'm getting it. Unfortunately, the surface rust on this axle housing seems to have eaten away at part of the number. I'm only hoping I can get enough of the number that I can make a good educated guess as to what this number was supposed to be. It does confirm one other thing I was afraid of. This is the only housing I can get this BOM off of. The other front housing, which looks like the same model, does not have a chance of giving me this BOM because there's a bracket welded right across where this number would have been. So I think there's very little chance I'm going to get that. So I'm going to try a few tricks, see if I can get this number a little more clear, and we'll go from there. Alright folks, so after a bit of work in Photoshop to try to see if I could clean up the images that I took of the number that I discovered on that axle tube, I was able to decipher roughly 3 numbers. 13-2. I got a couple other numbers. Here, I'm going to hide the results here, but here's my decoder ring. I found a couple other numbers. It might be 610, and then a missing number 2, and then 13-2. So I decided that that's probably enough to go to the list of BOMs, the BOM decoder site, which I took a quick screen grab of me searching through, so I'm going to try to put that in here. So anyway, what I did is I just basically said, I'm going to search for 13-2 because that's the last 3 numbers of the BOM. The -2 is important because that tells you what configuration the axle was shipped in. That is like gear ratio and knuckles and whatnot. So that's important. I know it's a kingpin, obviously. It's got the fittings on the end for kingpins, so that's obvious. I know it's a high pinion Dana 60, right? I know it's a driver's side drop. I could probably figure out the gear ratio. That would give me one more piece of information, but that's not enough to tell me whether it's a snofighter or not. The BOM is enough to tell me whether it's a snofighter or not. So I did a search for 13-2, and the first result was like an 05 Ford Super Duty. This is obviously not an 05 Ford Super Duty, simply because it's kingpin, not ball joint. The second, however, was a 1988.5 through 1991.5 Ford reverse rotation 410 kingpin. That sounds like the axle I've got. It is not a Snofighter. The Snofighters have a different BOM. They don't end in 13-2. So unless I got the 13-2 wrong, which that's the one piece that is pretty clear in this number, I don't have a Snofighter. So did the guy lie to me? I don't think he lied to me. He probably thought he had a Snofighter because it is high pinion, it is a Dana 60, and it is kingpin, and those are three of the things that make the Snofighter axle desirable. The fourth thing that makes a Snofighter axle desirable is that longer driver's side axle tube. So, does that mean I can't use this axle? No. What it means is I need to take that into consideration when I build it. If I wanted to try to go low center of gravity, that passenger or driver's side axle tube is going to be a problem because I don't have enough room to really mount things flush or low like I might if I was trying to do a low center of gravity. Dana 60s may not lend themselves well to a low CG anyway. So, what am I going to do? I don't know. I'm still up in the air. I started doing some pricing on what it's going to take to actually turn these into functioning axles again, and to put in decent axle shafts, and to put in a locker and gears and knuckles, and rebuild the kingpins, and put spindles on the knuckles, and steering, and all that. I'm probably going to put $6,000 into this axle. That's including the housing. Like, I've already got the housing. I got the housing cheap. That's great. But that's a lot of money, right? For $6,000, I could do a lot with $6,000. I could buy a Pro Rock 44 for $6,000. I could buy, hell, I could buy a rear Pro Rock 60 for $6,000, right? That's a lot of money to put into a junkyard axle. So do I do it? I don't know. Now, to return this to stock would be a little cheaper, but I don't want stock. I need a locker. Otherwise, what's the point? Why would I be building this if I'm not putting a locker in it? I need gears. I want 35 spline shafts. Maybe RCVs. RCVs themselves are $15K or $1.5K. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit. My point is, I'm not sure if I'm going to use this axle at this point. The rear 60, laying here, is a perfectly usable axle. The downside to this is I believe they are 30 spline? I think they're 30 spline, which is kind of small for a 60 if you ask me. But I'm going to take this apart in another video, and we'll count the splines, and we'll see if it's actually 30 spline or not. I did look up the BOM on this. I forget where I found it, to be honest. I think it was actually on the pumpkin on this one. But, yeah, I believe it's a 30 spline with a... well, I don't remember now. I want to say that this rear is also the same year range that I found with this BOM that I looked up, or that I deduced. So, anyway, I don't want to ramble on too far. I already have. My point is, this is not a Snofighter. What do I do now? Maybe I go... The wind is blowing the plastic around, made me think there was something walking around my garage. Maybe I go and get a 44 front end. Full width. Same width as this 60. And I build a 60-44 and call it good. Works for dirt lifestyle. Maybe it'll work for me. So anyway, I've got sand in my shoes from this sandblaster, and I have a hell of a mess to clean up. So I think what I'm going to do is do that and call this video done for now. So there you go. If you have trouble finding your BOM on a front Dana 60 with a passenger side or driver side drop, it's right here, which is exactly where the internet said it would be. However, you can't see it through all the paint and whatnot. You need to sandblast it or wire wheel it or whatever to get underneath all that crud, and then you can see it. And then you can just barely see it. So, alright folks, that's it for now. I'm going to edit this video and get it out for you guys. And if I'm releasing this before Friday, January 17th, I'm going to tell you that something cool is happening on Friday, January 17th, that you're going to want to subscribe and watch notifications on SWBCrawler's YouTube channel, because something's going to go live, and I think it's going to be awesome. So, I'll catch you next time.